Hello, everybody. This is Monica Paolini from Senza Fili, and you are on Sparring Partners. And welcome you all. As you might know already, this is a live event where we have unscripted conversation on any topic. APIs is today's topic. And um, the rule of the game is that we talk to each other for an hour. And to make the conversation more interesting, we invite you to participate. There is no Q&A at the end. What that means is that we want to have your questions as we go along. And this allows for you to ask the questions where they're relevant. So we just answer them right away. And what we do is that as your questions come in, we try to fit them in our discussion. So sometimes we answer them right away. Sometimes give us a little bit of time. But we'll do our best to get there and answer as many as we can. And we do value what you think. So please do ask questions. Nice questions. And you can also talk to each other in the chat. And so, just make sure you're nice to each other, respectful, but, say whatever, and you're free to disagree with us. And in fact, we hope that you disagree with us so that you put us in place. Now, the topic today is, as I said, network APIs. I know that many of you, call in sparring partners all the time. So I did a lot of them on AI and automation in preparation for a report that just came out. So now I'm ready for the new topic, and the new topic is APIs. I'm starting to write a report on this, so expect to have more sparring partners and other events on APIs. And but we are off to an absolutely fantastic start with Daryl Schoolar and Markus Kümmerle. Daryl has been on Sparring Partners before, so many of you will know him, but he is a different position, so he will tell us about that. And Markus is both at Deutsche Telekom and at CAMARA, and he just knows everything about APIs. So whatever questions you have, he will be able to answer it. I can just say that Daryl and I have we have more the analyst view, so we have more opinions, but Markus actually knows this stuff, if I might say so without getting Daryl offended.
No, not at all.
Okay, so
I know my role here.
okay, so let's start with some introductions and then we will get on to the topic. Daryl, why don't you go first?
Sure, yes. Thanks, Molly. Yeah, so she said my name's Daryl Schoolar. I'm a director at Recon Analytics. We're a research firm based here in the United States. My role there is working on the what we call the CSP Insight Group, where we run every quarter surveys of operators around the globe, 200 of them, on different topics. And one of the ones that we've done quite a bit, obviously, for I guess the last 3 quarters, is asking questions around network APIs. What are operators, is it on the radar, developing strategies? Where do they see the benefits? Where do they see the challenges? And, things of that nature. So certainly looking forward to this discussion.
Okay, so I now got the cover off. So Markus, how about you?
Yeah, hello also from my side. Happy to be in the webinar today. I'm Markus from Deutsche Telekom. I had the great luck and honor to work on this API exposure topic now for 4 years, to lead it. So starting with the PowerPoint phase to convince people about the new business opportunities, and then doing some first tests in the labs, inviting first customers, getting their feedback, their excitedness of this topic, and then bring it into the live networks as technical service, but then also as commercial products. So I've done the whole life cycle until now. And as we learned very early that we only have a good opportunity for business, a scalable business, it's necessary to have the APIs in all the networks in all the countries. We reached out to other telcos and got a very positive confirmation that we are on the right way, and we tried to find out to build an alliance for that, and it ended in CAMARA in the open source project. So, and also I'm happy to have driven this for the last years. Now I'm the chair of the outreach committee, and with that role, I'm mainly sitting here, but I also can answer questions to DT.
Excellent, excellent. And so you started working on APIs before it became really hot topic, because I mean, API have been around for like what, 20 years? So it's nothing inherently new about APIs. It's not like 6G is a completely new thing. It's just something that has developed into something that has become a hot topic, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And so this is really important. And although I guess GT has a very important role in it, this is like a worldwide effort right now, which is promoted by CAMARA and GSMA, and there are what 30 how many 50 mobile operators part of it, and so there is a big momentum behind it. And so what we want to find out is that, you know, how important is this. And so maybe can you tell us, Markus, just sort of a way of introduction, what is new, what has changed, why are all of a sudden what all of a sudden we care about API more than we did before?
Yeah, so API is a normal means in the IT world that two machines can speak to each other. So it's nothing really new. It's there since decades. It's new for the telco industry because for a long time the networks were seen as a black box and nobody wants to touch it for security reasons, and also to secure the network. This has changed now because we see the urgentness of today's business cases to optimize and to use the information which we have in the networks. And also the operators now are looking for additional means of revenue. And so it's a win-win for both sides if we open the world. And in today's world, it shall be automized. And so the means for that is APIs. That's the simple reason why the topic is now there. There had been a couple of attempts in former times to do it, which were not as much as successful. We had a look on it and try to learn out of it and fix hopefully the biggest issues in the current approach. And in the moment, it looks like that we are very successful. So it's not that we have 50 operators in. We have now 389 companies all over the world in CAMARA working together, standardizing these APIs. More than 1,100 people doing it. And I think that's a really, really great success story until now. We have started Open Gateway on top to standardize the channels. Also, we have a lot of effort and people working on it. And we have the first partners filling the roles. So we have the first aggregators for the market because that's important to have an aggregation of these APIs. So in the moment, we have a big traction on it. And this time until now, it looks like that we are successful.
Well, what is different from the previous time when it didn't work?
I think there have been several attempts since 2005. I think it was the first one. And then we had one at 2010 and 2015. So it's a normal cycle. Every couple of years, it's coming again. But this one is now lasting for 4 years. And we have so much traction on it. So it looks very good in the moment.
Absolutely. Daryl, what do you think? Let's just go and have like a sort of a general high view, perspective of what do you think? I mean, because even from an analyst point, that's also a new topic, that you've been seeing before, but I never thought too much of it. It's like, yeah, sure, APIs, bring them on. And now it's like,
Yeah. Well, first, my question about Markus, with the number you gave of participants, how many of those are operators? So that, the 395 you said?
Oh, I can.
If you don't know off your head, that's fine.
I can have a look in parallel, Daryl, no problem. Let me search and answer a different question.
Yeah, no, but back to your question, Monica. I mean, the reason why I guess now, I mean, there's several factors driving it. I mean, one, you just take a step back. I mean, so they made the big investments in 5G, and there's plenty of complaints about they really haven't monetized 5G. So there's a need out there. Two, you were also seeing a lot of, operators going through what you call digital transformation or whatever, becoming cloud native, which I think is also kind of important, moving more toward that IT type environment. And I think another thing is also, going back 2 years ago, the whole Open Gateway Initiative and CAMARA and all that, the fact that, beforehand, a lot of these APIs, if you were looking to monetize them, they were very specific to the operator. But now with CAMARA, they're trying to make them universal so that to bring in the app developers, so they don't have to know telco networks. They don't have to think about, I want to blanket a market, so I have to, make one app for operator A, one for B, one for C. By this approach, they create one app and it will work, universally. So I mean, I think there's several different things there. Obviously, going back into the 5G monetization, though, I think that's a big driver of it. Looking at some of the possibilities around APIs, we've been talking about network slicing for a long time. APIs and app developers certainly can be a way of enabling those slices and actually really, making them commercial.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you ask how many operators are in CAMARA. I would ask how many of the other people are. I mean, because I think that what's interesting about what's happening with APIs is API is like point A to point B. It's like an interface, right? And so the value is to provide that interface, but also what that calls into the thing is that you need to have an ecosystem where you have point A and point B represented. So if all the mobile operators do it, it doesn't really make any difference unless there is somebody else on the other end.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you need to have the whole ecosystem, and I think that that's the kind of success that CAMARA is having, and because GSMA is more obviously geared to operators, and then we need to get everybody on top. So this is a good partnership in that respect of bringing everybody together. And the question is that what is the role? And what is the best way to get the application developers in the fold? Because so there are some APIs that are internal to the operators, and every operator can have their own, but then there are the ones that are outward facing.
Yeah.
And that I think is, as I said, it's really important that they are universal or global, that operators share. Because otherwise, if you are the app developer that doesn't really want to be in the weeds too much, they want to have an API that works with whatever operator they have. They cannot have a different version of, they cannot hook into every operator separately, because otherwise you just give up. They just use a different way to manage the application, right? So I think that I think that this is really interesting what's going on. So Markus, what did you find out?
So if you look on our list, if you consider the operators which have a revenue more than a $2-digit billion, then we have all except one.
Right.
Won't make names. But...
So if you look in total, so I had on my list, the wish list are 150. If I look on that, I would think that we have already 110. Still a way to go. The rest of the 40 we also want to get, because we need this availability of the APIs in all the networks. We only will together, so we should have all in one boat.
Yeah, I know, like, so for the surveys I've run, so it's been over 9 months now, and asking it every 3 months averages out 90% of the people that we talk to say that their company are in some stage of developing their strategy around this. And certainly I know, like, when we also asked about CAMARA and Open Gateway, there's definitely a high interest. I mean, even those that don't even have a strategy yet, this is on their radar.
Yeah. But when you say that they have a strategy, how close are they to actually implementing them and saying, okay, here they are?
That's a great question. Well, if you look at the 90%, probably 30 to 50 or 30 to 50% are at some point where they've actually created a strategy or their initial strategy, and the rest are more just in the process of developing it.
Yeah.
But
And
I think anyway, I mean, from my opinion, there, like I said, that there's three kind of parties you need to bring together to make this work. And I think to get the app developers interested, they have to see a big commitment from the operators. When especially if they're looking to do a mass market kind of commercial type application, they don't want to sell just to 30% of a market. They want to be able to sell. They want their addressable market to be 100%. And so I think that's why it's really important, say within a country, you get, basically all the major operators on board with this. And then that will be a key first step to getting the app developers involved. I think the other thing is also letting them get their hands on it, like some of the stuff we've seen, like Nokia's run at Mobile World Congress and stuff, different hackathons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daryl, I think it's even more developers are expecting that we have an aggregator in the market who collects the APIs and aggregates it, that they don't have this effort. And for that, I really appreciate that Open Gateway is doing this local champion initiative to bring the operators together, to find the operators, to work jointly on a market that really makes sense and brings the thing perfectly forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you describe what the aggregator does? Is it like like the roaming aggregators, for instance?
No, it's not roaming. It's real aggregation. So look, for example, look into, let's take Germany. There we have three operators. It's Vodafone, it's Telefonica, and it's Deutsche Telekom. They are mainly sharing the market. To work, for example, in the fraud area, banking institutes are accepting a coverage of the APIs of at least 70%. I think it's more 90% or 95%. To make this thing useful. And so we have to find a possibility to aggregate the APIs that a bank can go to one place and gets the API, and it's independent of the telco network. And that is solved by an aggregator. So it gets the call from a bank, and then the first step, he identifies using the phone number, which operator is it? And then does the call directly to that operator, gets the result of the API, and provides the result back to the bank. That's a simple thing.
Right. Do you see these aggregators to be on a national basis or global basis or both? Or? It's
depending on the use case. So all these fraud things are mainly local things from the national laws. But we see also a lot of use cases like teleoperated driving, for example. Cars have a very bad ability. They can drive over borders. So there you need a more continental aggregator or even a global aggregator for that use cases.
Okay, so there will be like the link from operators to app developers. Now, what about the revenue stream in here? Who is paying what?
That's quite simple. So the developer is paying the aggregator is paying the operator. So that's the usual model, how it works. And so the aggregators get a share of the revenues for their services, mainly for finding out which is the right operator.
Yeah. Daryl, do you think the app developers will pay for it?
Yeah, because they're hoping at the end, whoever's using their apps paying them. Whether it's the bank paying the app developer to make sure there's no fraud, or depending on what the app is. I mean, but that is, the monetization is a big hurdle that has to be developed, because operators, they want to be paid for this. They don't want to, do it free. I mean, I think, well, Markus described, I think, is generally going to be the flow of the income. I don't think, every API is going to be monetized at the same rate. Is going to be, that is still something we worked out, that depending on what the API does or the amount of data or what the data exposes, that there'll be different, costs for that type of access. That, again, something that requires a quality of service in bringing up a slice of a network to do a sporting event is going to cost probably a lot more to the app developer or the operator will get a lot more money than just say a quick, SIM verification at an ATM machine.
Yeah. Well, I also would imagine that there are APIs that will not generate any revenue, and that's perfectly fine, because some might be to the advantage of the operator because it just makes their network more efficient. So I guess that we need to, so the monetization aspect is important. I mean, the monetization in terms of increased revenues, but it's also APIs can increase the efficiency of the network. And in that case, there might be no direct kind of revenue from the app developer, but there is an advantage in the sense there is a cost saving for the operator because they can run the network more efficiently. So I think that there is this other component that is not just the straight revenue generation, but also when you look at different applications, I guess the question is that is API bringing a value on top of the application itself? Because most of the applications, so like financial services, they already have their apps. So the API improves their apps rather than creating, in most cases, a new one. And correct me if I'm wrong here. So the willingness to pay is going to be dependent on the improvement of what they currently have. So I guess that's really the hurdle that you need to go through. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let's take the current example. It's number verify. That's an API which replaces the former two-factor authentication. So each of us know this. You want to have an access to a system, then you get a SMS with a code, and then you have an open a website and input the code, and then you get access. So it's a two-step thing and manual effort and takes time and is not very good for user experience. And it is number verification is replacing it by the SIM card. So the second factor is the SIM card, and that is checked in the moment in the background by the operator. And so the authentication runs really smooth with a much better user experience and much faster. So half of the time. And that's a clear improvement of the use case where people are willing to pay, especially the app developers, because the whole user experience gets better. So it's also about user experience, to improve the user experience, provide more value, and that's the reason to monetize.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's filled with examples of that in the past. I mean, Lyft and Uber didn't invent taxis. They just basically invented an app to make it easier for you to call one.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually most of the time when people are annoyed at an app or anything is because of this kind of glitches, which has nothing to do with the app. So, if you're calling a car with Lyft or Uber, it might work very well, but it's just like the interface. So the car itself might arrive and whatever, or might not, but the problem sometimes is just really in the interface, or it's slow or whatever, which is exactly the kind of thing that you would be so it's not like people would be paying more. I mean, the end user, like us using the Uber to go somewhere, but Uber would make more money because they would be more effective in selling whatever they're selling.
Or a more effective channel.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the advantages of the whole open gateway in CAMARA is it gives the one way, one single channel to reach the broadest audience.
Yeah. Now let's get to the one question we have, and then we can sort of come back into like, okay, this is all that good. What are the challenges? So let's get to the challenges next. But there is as this brings up the issue of security. And I know, Daryl, when you talk to operators, you find out that security is a major concern, understandably. Security is always a concern, but with API, it's especially a concern because you are exposing network capabilities. And the moment you you open something up, it's good, and but also there is a risk of security.
Yes.
And also, as is also mentioned, the high time consumption. So what is the security risk with APIs?
Well, I mean, from my discussion, I mean, there are quite a lot of them. And I'll say, just starting off from my own, interviews and surveys, when you ask those who don't have a strategy yet or still like trying to figure out what they want to do about it, they say one of the biggest reasons they're not doing anything is because they're worried about security. If you ask those that do have a strategy, they say one of their biggest concerns after monetization is security. So it shows up everywhere. And so from the research, I mean, the security issue comes in all sorts of different forms. They're concerned about if there's an app and the app is highly adopted, it's going to become a target for nefarious people to use to try to hack in to find information off the network. So the more successful it is, the bigger the risk, like you said. But then they're also concerned about what the operators are concerned about, if they share their data with the app developer, to make sure that that data stays with the app developer and that app developer somehow, the data doesn't get out to the app developer. Definitely, there are also concerns about how it's stored, all the data, because I mean, the more this takes off, the bigger the requirement for storage. So they want to make sure everything is stored and stored correctly and stored the same way. Yeah, this could be a whole nother sessions here for you, Monica. Just the security part alone.
Well, but security is always a concern. So
Yeah.
it's just that I guess that the way I personally think about security is that whenever you bring something new in the network, you have to say, okay, we need to think about security is never going to go. It's an issue that will never go away. It's just that you need to what's the best way to deal with security in that context.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, if you can't say, oh, there is a security issue, we don't do it. Like, there is a security issue, we need to deal with it. Right. So, Markus, how do you see, I mean, like, for instance, from DT point of view, I mean, how big of a concern is it? Or, well, I don't want to put you necessarily on the spot. I mean, in general, for an operator, how do you see that?
It's a critical success factor for the whole thing. And we are taking it very, very serious. So we are using all the existing security standards to create the best APIs, like the OpenID standards for authentication, authorization, that all the API traffic is encrypted, all that kind of stuff. So that's the one part of the answer. I think the more important one is misuse of the API. Because we have now an innovation, and with all new topics, they have two sides. They can help a lot, but also they can be misused. And nobody knows exactly in the moment where the way goes. So for that reason, we at DT are very, very careful. We typically put a new API first in a managed phase, which is called early no frequent mover program. Now this one we have changed it. That we use on the check the use case, the customer of each API order to make sure that there is no misuse. And we do it for the first time to see how it works. And then if we have experience with the API, we open it more and more. So we are very careful that this innovation is used in a positive way and not as misused.
So do you have a way to sort of like maybe aggregators would to kind of vet potential developers? So to say, okay, this developer is kind of fishy, we don't really want him because it could be a bad actor.
Yeah. So to order the API, you have to provide the use case and the purpose. And by that, we can decide if we provide access or not. That's a simple thing.
So you just, so you have coverage, but it's not like I decided I'm going to use the APIs and I do.
No.
It's not like buying something on Amazon kind of thing.
We are obliged to do it. We have to check these legal purposes, also to decide for which of the APIs we need a user consent and which can be provided by a legitimate interest, for example, fraud. So it's a very big topic to follow the legal standards, and unfortunately they are different from country to country. And these laws are also not very clear. They open a lot of gray zone. So that's a difficult part of it. In the moment, we are very careful. So if there is a question behind, we rather tend to get the user consent so that we don't have an issue here.
Yeah, and so the regulation is the other side of the coin here, because obviously you want regulation to support security, whatever, but too much regulation can also be an impediment.
Yep.
As I believe in Germany, we're going to be a little bit on that end of the spectrum. How is it? Because again, API is a new thing. Do we need new regulation, or is the regulation that is already in place that is going to affect the way APIs can be rolled out?
Yeah, we already got the first experience with Number Verify, for example. It was easy to introduce it in the Brazilian market. It was also easy to introduce it in Spain. In Germany, it's a mess because I think we are the most regulated country in that world. And yeah, it's not regulated clear. It's a gray zone. It makes sense to get in touch with the government authorities, data privacy authorities, to discuss with them and to find a balance between data privacy and the usability. So this discussion has to be done, and I think we need it on a more continental base. So it should be good to have a regulation for at least Europe, one for the US, one for Asian Pacific region. That has to be done.
Yeah. So in that case, for instance, the same API cannot be used across countries. So you might need to tweak it a little bit for different countries, or is it?
In some countries you need consent for the user. In some countries you don't need it. So it's not a big problem, but you have to define it. You have to define the rules that you are compliant to all the legal laws and guidelines.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's, I think, for me, in the moment, the most open topic, to get in touch with the authorities, to find a good balance, to define these rules. We have solved now the standardization by CAMARA. We have so many traction on it, so much traction. We have solved the standardization of the distribution channels by Open Gateway, with the northbound standards, with the Operate APIs from TM Forum, with the playbooks and business templates on the GSMA side. We even have solved the roaming part, because we consider roaming from one operator to another as a simple aggregation. So one operator does the aggregation of another one, and so we can use the same APIs, the same templates, the same playbooks for that. So that's all solved. We also have the first companies coming in the ecosystem, taking these aggregator roles. That's really great. The most open point for me is now this consent topic, defining the rules, that we are really compliant to all the laws in the countries.
So Markus, is GSMA or TM Forum or some other group taking on some of these different security or data handling, data storage roles as well, trying to set some guidelines?
Yeah, so GSMA has built a group, a global legal council, they have named it. And in this group, all these topics are discussed, and the different authorities are contacted to find solutions. So there is an instance in place, but it has to make progress.
Absolutely. Now we have another question, which I guess is kind of like fits in, and this is from Art, and I'm gonna be rephrasing a little bit. But he says, so for the enterprise apps, API are an all or nothing proposition, so each operator in a country must adopt them and make them available. And then you have stability, version control, clear and fair cost, long-term availability, and that's what it is. And same with internet APIs, just send operators because they're just a pipe to the API. So I guess so what he's trying to get here is how can you make sure that you have, I guess it's what you call coverage, which, you know, from a network RAM perspective, it's not just it's actually the same idea of, you know, you have coverage with your phone. It's like, does it work wherever you are or not, based on having everybody adopting it. But so there is one thing, it's like coverage, but also there is stability. There is, you know, there's going to be a development version control. Is it, you know, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so we have different way to manage it. The first one happens in CAMARA. In CAMARA, we have a release management in place, in which the releases of all the APIs are coordinated and collected to a total CAMARA release. That helps the development part, but is the foundation to have a release or version management also in production. The second step, we had made an alignment that we want to have at least 3 parallel API versions in place. So we have a very old one, an older one, and a new one. And then if the next one comes, then the oldest one is dropped off. So that gives time for overlapping, for the aggregators to do things. And then the last topic, yes, we need an alignment in the markets about that, and that is happening exactly in this local champion rounds. There we are talking for each market, which APIs, which versions, what do we do next, which features do we need, what does the customers need from us, so that all the operators are aligned, working on the same APIs and developing at the same time, enabling then the aggregators to do their job. That's quite simple. And the result of it is shown on the GSMA. I don't know how it's named. It's a page where you can look on all countries and all the APIs. So all the people see which versions are out in production, and you have a global comparison. What's there? That's the end result for transparency.
Yeah.
So in the moment with that solution, it works well. Let's see how it gets in future when we have more operators, more country, more APIs. If we need a more stronger regulation on that, or coordination on that, not regulation. But let's see. For the moment, it's fine.
But I thought buried in Art's question was another part that was actually really interesting. I hadn't really thought about. I mean, I agree with you saying. I mean, obviously, within a country, you want, you know, universal operator adoption. You know, the aggregators, the platforms. You know, they do a lot of the management to keep everything kind of universal, so everybody, you know, has the same thing and talks the same language. But what happens? You know, you got a country, you got 3 major operators, and for whatever reason, after they've gotten to the step, you know, you just described, you know, the application, it's running along fine for a year, but like, you know, what if one of the 3 the operators say, you know, I just don't want to support this anymore?
There, it was a little fast for me. I haven't got
Okay.
it. So
right.
sorry.
So I agree with, you know, the situation, you know, what you described. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's very important. You know, they want universal coverage of an operator within a market. And obviously, you know, the gateway, CAMARA and all that, you know, they kind of set up, you know, so it's a universal API and the management all done. So what is the situation though? Like, as Art put in his question, you know, all 3 operators in the market, they're running along, they're running this API for a year or so, but then one of the operators says, I don't want to support it anymore. And there goes your coverage.
And actually, it could be that, you know, the operator says, yeah, you know what, I'm so good at it that I have my own API, which is so much better.
That's all possible. It's a free market.
Right? Yeah, no, right. I mean, so it's not like they're necessarily moving out of APIs. It's like, oh, we are better than everybody else.
Yeah, but Monica,
it's
your case,
differentiator, right?
Yeah. Your last case only happens if you have a niche application, which is only for a local market and only for one telco network. Then such a generic single operator API can make sense. It will not happen with the typical anti-fraud APIs, because there you need the coverage, and all operators know they only can sell it if all are doing the same things. So it's a normal thing which is regulated by the market and not a big issue.
Imagine like the ones that are highly adopted, just the mere customer pressure will kind of force an operator to continue to support, because they don't want to be, they don't want like their customer base not to have access to something that's widely adopted.
Yeah. Well, I guess
So
it's
we have
still
to,
sort of like following 3GPP. I mean, they don't have to, but everybody does. You know?
There's certain peer pressure.
Yeah.
Kind of like here in the United States, when you got, the satellite companies and the cable companies, and if one of them drops a very popular thing like ESPN or CNN or something like that, there's a lot of pressure on them to bring it back on. So I imagine some of the things in terms of the applications, like the one with the bank. I mean, if you have a giant bank that's nationwide and all of a sudden one operator won't support them, they risk losing customers.
Yeah. Or
The
they're
operator
not
does.
supported well enough, because I guess that's it. It's not necessarily going to be a black and white situation, right? So the operator might say we support the API, but they really don't do it as well as others. But then eventually, so some might be a little bit slower at really.
So I don't see it as a big problem in the moment, because it's good to have this market dynamics. It's all driven by customer demand, by the market demand. And if there is demand, then all the operators will support it. If some are doubting about it, then there will be a discussion. They are discussing it and going back in their teams, looking again on it. And in the end, they have to convince each other not to do it or to do it. It's quite simple.
Yeah. And I guess it's all it's open source, so everybody can contribute. So it's not just okay. Actually, let me kind of step back a little bit. So we have the GSMA APIs, which are kind of limited in number, which you want to have limited in number so that you don't have an infinite number of them. But then you have other APIs. So there is the TM forum APIs, vendor APIs, Wi-Fi APIs, and whatever. So there is a lot of APIs doing different things, right? So and at CAMARA you deal with more than just the GSMA API, right? But not with all of them.
The scope of CAMARA and the scope of the Open Gateway APIs are telco APIs for end customers who really provide content and value to end customers. That is the scope. It's not limited to mobile, not limited to fixed line, not limited to IT or cloud. It's telco. But to bring that APIs to the end customers, you need an automation of the operation of the API. So a telco creates a catalog, and this catalog has to be transported to a marketplace where it is shown to the end customer. And if the end customer is interested, he can order an API. You have to do the onboarding of the customer. You have to send back the credential to access the APIs. You have to exchange billing information between marketplaces and telco operators. So for that, we use the TM Forum already existing APIs. So in the moment, mainly TMF 931, 961 is coming because they are already there. We don't need to reinvent it. And so we have signed a white paper with TM Forum, with the GSMA and the Linux Foundation CAMARA, how we organize this ecosystem to make use of all the assets which are already there. And a lot of APIs we are using internally to build our APIs. So the CAMARA APIs are intent-based. Let me give an example. A developer comes and wants to have low latency for the next half hour. So and then it's our job to translate that in technology. And that could be that we have first to do some BSS kind of thing, so to create some slices. There we use TM Forum APIs. We have to do some edge cloud topics. There we use CMAC. We use the 3GPP APIs then to optimize the run, and so on. And we use all the API standards which are there to build these simple, easy to consume developer APIs in CAMARA.
Absolutely. No, I think that this is a very interesting, thing, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the use cases. So, fraud, number verification. So, what do you see? Actually, maybe Daryl, why don't you start? Because when you talk to operators, what is that you see, you hear in terms of, what are they good for? What kind of use cases are the most popular?
Well, I mean, really, it's kind of the ones that we've talked about. A lot of the operators are starting off with, I guess, would say be some of the simpler ones, which are around like number verification and SIM, very security oriented. I'm trying to think of like all three of the ones that were adopted down in Brazil, and I'm trying to think, I don't know, it was Indonesia or Malaysia where all the operators got on, but a lot of them were kind of starting off with things around security and end user security as a way to enter the market. Most of them say, though, when they think about the revenue potential, they're really seeing the quality of service. And I know that there's another one that's coming up behind it, more about like a slice on demand, where they see that being like a big revenue one for them. Obviously, the addressable market for people that need a slice or quality of service is limited, but the revenue, the dollars per instance, are significantly higher than the smaller ones. But most of them are starting off with some of the smaller kind of end user security. Is something, sounds almost like an oxymoron, but that's a little bit of a safer place for them to start with. It's simpler to get into. Because right now we are really in like kind of the prove it phase where you can take everything that's been worked on at the different organizations, but now you get to the operator and you start doing the commercial part of it and see how well that holds up.
Yeah. I mean, could it be that APIs is what gets network slicing off the ground? Because, we know you could do it, but it's not really working. So you could argue that APIs will make network slicing more sellable. I mean, you just have a framework in which you can actually monetize, which is why the whole issue about monetization, I think it's a little bit tricky because it's like, if you monetize, what does it mean? What is the role of API? So you have network slicing. You don't need to have APIs to have network slicing. On the other hand, it could very well be that without APIs, network slicing is not really going anywhere as much, or it's going to take longer. So the question is, how do you, what counts as monetizing it? But it might help. So you think that network slicing is going to be improved by it, or is it more that API gets strengthened by the fact that there is network slicing? I mean, what's the relationship?
I mean, I guess you can go either way, but I think APIs, and really I should say the app developer more so than the API, their access to the app, will help network slicing in terms of the commercial aspect, because they will package up these capabilities and go back to what Mark is saying, like about the intent, that the end user doesn't want to say, I want this thing of latency, I want this. They're like, hey, I just want a protected stream, and the app developer can work with the APIs to do it. So I think APIs will help move slicing along in terms of, one, the packaging of it, and two, that they're going to work as a channel for the sales of those network slices as well. I mean, that will, be part of the go-to-market for the operators, is through these aggregators and through the developers themselves for actually selling the slices as well. Because the end user may not really even know that, oh, I have no idea this is network slicing. I merely went to an app developer and said, for 90 minutes, I need this type of performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Markus, what do you see in terms of the most popular use cases?
So I think in the moment, in a lot of market, we see a big interest for fraud protection. And it's very clear because we get more and more digital business, unfortunately also more and more fraud. And so people are willing to pay to prevent. So we have the business and the demand. From a technical point, it's very easy to build it. We all have the capability in our network to do it easily. And also from a regulation side, it's more easy because the authorities are more willing to make a compromise between the data privacy and usability type of thing. So it's a good starting point at the moment. We have the first APIs out. They create the first revenues. So it's getting a more mature market. And I think for the moment, that's a very good starting point to get experience with the APIs. And from that, you then can move, for example, into location topics. There we also have a big ask from customers. for example, from logistic companies, that they get notification if a truck comes close to a store and they can prepare to getting the load, such kind of things. Also from some drone companies to validate the real location that they are allowed to fly along that, all that kind of stuff. That could be also a good area, but in that area you have to be very careful. If it's IoT device, no problem. If it's user device, you need the consent of the user and be very, very careful about data privacy. So that could be a second area then. And the third one is about the quality of the connection, as Daryl stated. But there you should really be careful. So if you have a situation where you only have a few bits, which have to be transported very reliant and very fast through the network, I think that are good cases because they don't affect the network too much. We can build it, and we also have a scalable business on it because we can sell it more and more times in one cell. The more difficult cases are the ones which require higher bandwidth and especially higher upload bandwidth. So these ones are interesting. We get more money. I'm completely with you, Daryl. We should not close the eyes and do nothing in that area. But we should only use it very selectively. And that's our strategy also in DT. We won't sell such things via API. We rather would use products and sell the products like our video production product. So you can book it for a certain time at a certain location, and then you get the behavior of the connectivity. And it's a service around and SDKs around. It's not a simple API. It's a real product with more value, and then you get also a bigger revenue for it.
So this is very interesting because you're saying, well, APIs are good, but there might be something that requires more than an API in terms. So let's say you have the Netflix of the world where you have a huge amount of. So there is not, the API is not going to address the full extent of the collaboration you need to have with Netflix. Is that?
Yeah. Monica, in the background, you also have the APIs, but you don't give the APIs out. You only use it internally. Yes. And to be really honest, this bandwidth is our most valuable thing, and it's limited. It's a limited resource, and we should only use it very carefully. And for that, we decided such things to create real products to get a bigger part of the revenue and use in the background the APIs to enable it.
Yeah. Well, and it does make sense because exposing capabilities might also, means giving away your crown jewel, as somebody just said in the presentation. So you have to be careful as to what you expose, that it doesn't come back to what,
yeah. Then it's not misused. That's the one thing, and also that it does not hurt our networks. So in the moment, we are really checking case by case if we sell it and limit also the number of such products per cell that the other users are not affected. It's also a critical thing due to network neutrality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's okay. There is another thing that the GSMA API are for the cellular network, but 80% of the traffic from our phones go through Wi-Fi, more or less. So if you have an API that is focused on the cellular network, what should, let's say I'm an app developer. I know that the people using my service is going to be mostly on Wi-Fi. Wouldn't I want to have the same sort of API that works not just on the cellular network, but also on Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that makes sense. And as we told, we want to have intent-based API, and they are independent of the technology behind. So look on this quality and demand. we have implemented an API in the German market based on profiles, on 5QI profiles. T-Mobile US has implemented the same API in the US market based on a low latency slice. And we are working on a version also for local Wi-Fi networks. The same API providing the same behavior, but different networks. And in best case, it's hidden from the user. They only call us, please give me the best connectivity, and we check where's the user, in which network, what do we have to do, and provide him the best user experience.
So is
That's
this
the idea.
The GSMA APIs that can also work for Wi-Fi, or is it an extension of them?
No, sure.
Yeah, okay. So
sure.
it's not limited to, yeah.
Yeah.
So the mobile operator obviously manages because it's their network. So it's their SIM card, obviously. It doesn't, whether you are on Wi-Fi or not.
We have started with the mobile thing because we made a investigation and saw that 65% of our latency we lose in the run. So for that reason, we started on the mobile side of things, but also we have to look in the fixed line to optimize the traffic. We have to look on the cloud topics to have the edge cloud. We have to look even on traffic influence. So defining where the data is moved from the telco infrastructure to the internet, and to bring that point close to the device. We have to look even on the devices. We are in talks with Qualcomm to get APIs on the chipsets to optimize the latency on the device so that we can put all together, and that then in the end provides for the end user low latency.
Yeah.
So in this scenario that just described, like, so it goes to say my Wi-Fi here at home. So not only would my mobile operator need to be involved in this, I guess my landline operator would also need to be participating in this as well.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Now we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to sort of get into the monetization and market expectations. And so there have been one famous report by McKinsey that, as often, is kind of like I think way over the top, but the methodology is kind of different, I guess. And they expect to have 100 to 300 billion in connectivity and edge computer related revenues for operators. And of this is going to be 10 to 30 billion, which are directly related to APIs. And then more recently, our common friend, Dimitris Mavrakis at Abbey Research, has published a new report that says that it's going to be more like 13 billions, and only if telco plans accordingly. And this is by 2028. And both cases are pretty much in the same. Actually, the McKinsey is like 5 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. I think I'm more with Dimitris here, but the question is, what do you count? What does it count as a revenue from APIs, other than the kind of revenue that an operator would get from an aggregator? So Daryl, what do you think? We both used to do market forecasts, and we both are kind of happily not doing them anymore. Right. So we still can comment on other people's for free.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I don't have an exact number, but I mean, I think, if you're looking at this, you got to see, I mean, how much of either forecast, how much of that revenue is actually new revenue versus existing revenue that an operator may already be getting, but by getting it in a different manner. So I think that's how you really need to look at the monetization, is how much does it grow the pie, not does it move it from one column to another and stay the same. But I will also say monetization, and this isn't forecastable or near as sexy as saying like billions of dollars. Some of the operators I talked to say, monetization isn't just about growing revenues. It's also about using network APIs to maintain the revenues that you have, that to provide your end user with an extra value. So you don't have to constantly play the thing of, well, if I want to keep them, I have to either give more data, bigger data packages, or, lower prices. So that's another way to think about monetization with APIs, is if it can keep them from the traditional trend of, I drop my price, I give you more data, that vicious cycle that so many operators and markets have been in for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, monetization is not just by creating more direct revenues, is to, well, not only maintain, but also reduce costs and creating value, which is a much wider category. And I think you're absolutely, I mean, that's a problem that I have with a lot of McKinsey reports, is that they double count, they just put into the API revenues everything. I mean, everything, but a lot of things that are not specific. So it's not like if API disappear, that's be the the difference.
Yeah, they might even throw in the amount of money analysts make off of white papers on this topic.
Okay, well, Markus, Daryl, thank you so much for participating in this.
Thank you for the invite, Monica.
Thank you so much.
It was our pleasure, Monica.
Yeah.
Great. And thank you all in the audience for participating and for asking questions. And the Sparring Partners will be available soon, both as a video and as a podcast. Sorry. And there will be more on this topic coming up soon. Thank you so much.